Rice, and welcome to my TED Talk. Last week I was responding to a colleague who had asked how she could sell the notion of a library learning commons to her teaching staff in a small First Nations school. Initially, I tried to recall what I knew about how Indigenous students learn and their ways of knowing. I immediately thought of the principles of learning and wonder if there was some overlap within the features of First Nations learning styles and qualities of an exemplary learning commons. So, I pulled up the poster. Words like reflective, experiential, relational, exploration, patience, and time stuck out to me as comparable qualities to the Learning Commons model. Next, I considered all that I had learned in university about Indigenous education and the commitment I had made to myself then to help educate both children and adults about how we can establish a healthier balance for these learners. As the final assignment in the History of Aboriginal Education course, we were able to choose how we wanted to reflectively show our learning. I chose a series of charcoal drawings demonstrating 4 major themes of First Nations history and education: arrival, fragmentation, assimilation, and finally, an intention for the future and present is to establish balance. With my personal commitment in mind and an opportunity at hand, it was a natural succession to an inquiry and my guiding question is, how can an understanding and respect for Indigenous people's heritage and their ways of learning and knowing be reflected to build a positive climate for the school library learning commons community? My research led me to an article by a master's student at UVic, Colleen Marchant, who clearly laid out the information I was seeking, and a bonus was that it was local research. Her focus was on the implications for new teachers at First Nations schools who may not be fully prepared for and educated about Indigenous ways of learning, being, and teaching. I used her findings, as well as the First Peoples Principles of Learnings, to create a summary of learning styles and preferences for Indigenous students in order to make a fair comparison to the qualities of the Learning Commons model. Our medicine wheel here will represent the Indigenous styles of learning, and anything outside of the circles will reflect relative aspects of the library learning commons. Within this visual, I have focused on the 3 R's of First Nations cultures as presented by Marchant: respect for individuals and land, relevance of curriculum to the learner, and reciprocative learning, partnership of learning with and from each other. In regards to the concept of respect comes an understanding that several personality traits have been shown to be an effective teacher of First Nations students: warmth, caring, sensitivity, having a sense of humor, and being trustworthy. All qualities we strive for as teachers and teacher librarians with every student we teach, and an important contribution to a positive learning commons. First Nations students also have a strong sense of place. Because places are so visually unique, they serve as excellent vehicles for recalling information and knowledge. And as Marchant explains, place-based education is an essential characteristic of Indigenous ways of learning. Together with the support of our staff and administrators, we strive to make our learning commons the hub of learning for all students, a unique and vastly different zone from that of their classrooms. In relevance of the curriculum to the learner, just as our BC curriculum has recently been set up, and as we are learning to teach and lead within the learning commons, Indigenous students too have shown to learn best when they are presented first with the big idea, then to see the details that relate to it, rather than the longer process of building generalities from the details. Marchant goes on to describe several characteristics of traditional Indigenous ways of teaching and learning, including, but not limited to, learning by doing, by deeply observing, by listening and telling stories, and learning in a community setting. It has also been found that First Nations students expect more opportunities for personal reflection, critical thinking, observation, experience, and autonomy. all of which, as we know, are traits of an established or leading learning commons, according to the Canadian Library Association. Finally, reciprocative learning, those somewhat awkward words themselves, quickly connected in my brain as to what we are striving for in our LLCs. In general, the participatory learning approach. Additionally, Indigenous students need security, and they find it in being a member of a group. Cooperation is their preferred learning strategy, which includes collective decision-making and flexible notions of time. For thousands of years, their culture's teachings have been based on interconnectedness, that is, cycles and circles being the prominent metaphors for life and reality, rather than our more Western, linear, and hierarchical models of learning. They can connect many sources of information and explore ways of accessing I strongly have an opportunity to reflect positively on the Indigenous and non-Indigenous students who have these preferred learning styles. We can provide the resources, collaborative time, and flexibility to establish a healthy learning culture within an exemplary learning commons to support school success of our First Nations students. I hope this has been helpful for you in your practices of teaching, learning, and creating ways to support Indigenous learners. Thank you for joining me tonight.